this meeting to order. It's been properly posted in all the proper areas. Do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to go over the first half of policy, 300 policies, and I'm just going to turn it right over to Maria.
Yes, good morning. So I just want to start to kind of say how it's very typical for directors and districts to do the series that pertain to their work. So I'd just like to tell everyone how I go about doing that. First thing I do is I kind of go through what I know is legally required, and I just went through all of that and highlighted which ones that we needed to have in the 300s. So you'll see all of those represented here. And this is the packet that we got from WASB when we signed on for which ones we had, which ones they needed in their policy manual index. And then the administrative team and myself met and we talked about the ones we had to have and which ones we'd be recommending, even if we didn't have to have them legally, which ones would be nice to have in the district. So that's how our series kind of came about. Then I usually have about 3 or 4 different things on my screens when I do policy work. WASB's policy, and as you know, they might have a couple different samples in there at the time. I always bring up a district that signs on to Neola, since they're the other big vendor. What do they have to say about that similar policy, because everyone has very similar policy work. Then I usually bring up Elmbrook's, as they usually have their own legal team kind of bring that up. And if it's a policy I'd recently updated in my former district, I sometimes bring up theirs, because I usually looked up all the same things, and then modified it for what I may or may not think is appropriate for Merton. The next step after that is our administrative team has reviewed all the ones that we're bringing forward in a policy meeting. We meet on Thursdays opposite our team meetings to try to get through the ones, since most of these are very pertinent to their work as well. So that's kind of the process that we've used. We sent these out to staff a couple weeks ago with the first links and all of that, and I have not heard anything from any staff members, and no one is here today, so I'm hoping there's nothing on here that was very concerning to them at all. So we'll just start with the first policy that's in our matrix, 313, student academic standards. You know, in the background area, I just basically put a little information in there for the committee members, but this is just a pretty it's sample policy 1 from WASB, and it's just, as we know, the board does approve standards every July, and that's what this policy kind of just notes, and we also are required to post it on the website, and it just tells us we do that as well.
And this is a new policy?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So do you have any questions on that at all, Troy? Nothing with 313. Okay, so no changes to 313. I'm just going to note changes on here. My goal would be to take to the board just the actual policy we're recommending at a committee with the changes, so they're not confused over what's new and what's old maybe. 321 school district calendar and school day. This actually would take place and require a delete of our current instructional hours or 6,000 policy. It's written to basically not point out exactly hours and minutes that we need. It just refers us to the law about that. So what's nice about when you do that in policies is the law changes, you don't necessarily have to update the policy. So that's one difference between the 6,000 that I'm recommending deleting. And it basically just allows, has our current practice, which is the district administrator, Russ, kind of develops and presents a district calendar to the board that the board has the final approval on, and that we are requiring the amount of instructional hours. I did recommend, you will notice some Neola work that was in here, when, specifically their work post-pandemic, including virtual instructional minutes. So it does allow us that if something would happen in the past, kind of similar to the pandemic, that we could go virtual and count that towards our instructional minutes, which is kind of preparation.
So you're recommending, so we're gonna replace this with our 6,000?
We'll delete 6,000.
6,000 is a delete on here,
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's next, yeah.
Yeah, so we would do that. And basically, I think, depending on, you know, this is really up to the board, you know, basically does allow us, as I said, to, you know, use potentially some different means if we're getting close to our our instructional minutes.
So Arrow is
Yep.
facing
Yep.
right now. If
Correct.
Another snow day.
You'll see a lot of, yep, correct, and that's in their policies that it would allow to be able to do that. And the DPI does allow for virtual minutes to be made up now, so as well.
It just doesn't corner us into how we would make up those days, which I think
A
is
little more
smart.
leeway.
Yeah, for sure. Is there any questions with that policy that you have, Troy?
No, I don't know. As long as you're taking out 6,000 and
Okay, I did make a note that I see superintendent here. I'll change that to district administrator for consistency. I find it once, no matter how much I looked at this. Yeah, all right. So then, our next line is then to delete policy 6,000 instructional hours.
so would that come up in the 600 policy?
No, we will. Good morning, Mary.
We'll make that motion.
No, it'll be deleted by then. It'll be deleted. We're deleting it. We're just jumping to the 6,000 to delete that policy and then jumping back.
Okay, just to make sure we're.
Yep.
Just because if we don't, then we have two
No, exactly, then we have.
policies of the same thing, and they're not, which one it supersedes the other, so I tried to delete if they were another number series as we went through. Okay, so you're okay on the deletion?
It's a little bit more, but I can't see why they wouldn't.
No, we have, it's no different
I
than,
mean, yeah.
we've
You
identified
have
it
one
in
policy,
under
they'll say
different
one
things.
thing and then the other one.
We've done that before, or we will be in a week.
Okay, the next two I do not have copies of, they're simply renumbers, they're policies that we had put in, just this July. Policy 330, curriculum development, and policy 330, the rule, corresponding rule. So that would be a renumber from our current policy. Is there any questions on that?
What's it renumbered from,
70 and 40.
I gotta look online.
I'll get it, you can keep going.
Sometimes, depending on
yeah,
how they are when you look online now, it might have my renumbering. Jeanette noticed. It's like 7. But we should know that. 740 and 741. The number of, and I'll put that on there, 740. And the rule is 740.1. So that renumbering just aligns to this matrix, Troy.
Yep.
You know, to follow down with the policy work. Administration doesn't have any recommendation for changes on that. So this is parent instructional rights and student privacy policy. It's kind of a meaty one, 333. You'll notice I used a WASB sample policy, looked at Neola's and Oconomowoc to kind of organize this one. It kind of talks about overall, well, first of all, you're legally required to adopt policies addressing parent rights in relation to district programs or activities, and student privacy is the very important one in here, that we wanna make sure that we have. The other important part of there, of course, is that school districts that receive federal funds for any program administered by the U.S. Department of Ed have to meet the student privacy laws. That's the biggest one. You lose money when you don't do that, or you don't get it. If you decide not to do that, which is not a good thing to do, and frankly, illegal kind of to do that. It is custom right now for here in Merton with what we've already agreed. Parents can opt into or opt out of.
And then it just follows state statute there.
Mm-hmm.
And which one?
Be number 1. So basically, the parents may request to opt out of human growth and development, the forward and 4 and 8, and then the instruction in social emotional learning in grades 6 through 8.
Actually, the first one.
We're opt-in.
Yeah,
We're
that's
opt-in on
not correct.
human growth and development.
That's number 2. Number
Okay.
2 is opt-in. I have that
Oh, I'm sorry,
accurate.
number 2.
Okay. yeah,
The first
we're
one
opt-in.
is really rating for anything that was like under our old alcohol, tobacco, that type of thing.
Okay.
That's what's, yeah. ODA is what that
Well, check
first
it.
number 1 is, yes. Then the
Testing
state,
the fourth and eighth grade.
right, which
Fourth and
is
eighth grade,
state law.
you
Parents can opt out at grades 4 and 8.
And only those 2 grades.
Yep, and then the emotional learning 6, 8, and then yes, I did make number 2 separate for us here because of how we opt in. And you'll say at their child for participation.
So then,
That's why everything takes a while, all the nuances.
And as far as surveys, do we have anything in there about like third-party surveys?
We do have something in here on surveys.
C is survey.
And which specific type are you?
I just know we had a conversation, I think what, back in last June, July, about, third-party surveys.
that's in another policy. That's
Okay,
a
I can't
different
remember.
policy.
There's so many different.
Yep, that's a different
survey
policy.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, the 400 series is students, and there's kind of a lot of, sometimes we have to make decisions, if you put them in 300s, 400s, depending on the thing. I haven't looked yet at the 400s. I know we'll be working on that next year to answer that question. Ron says that he has that.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, I know
Price.
somewhere.
Yeah, it's in there, yep.
Yeah. I just didn't know if it would transfer onto this one or not.
Well, basically, you would have a requirement on any surveys to make sure that it would still follow for a whole buffer for the students. So I really don't know what third-party vendor we would allow to have surveys to. Most of the time, they like to do that in high school, and of course, up there, they have the requirement of doing that for the military and other things. But I can't think of why too often. In my 12 years being a curriculum director, I never had a third-party survey. That wasn't something we purchased by the district or part of our programming. So, in which case then it would fall under our district responsibilities for why we would or wouldn't do it. But that's a good question. And then this is basically allowing our parents, of course, to have access to our stuff that we have.
It's a big one.
The only thing I would say most noted in this one, Ron, also would be that it should be going with our annual notices for parents. So,
Free policy,
which means that when we have parents register
Mhm.
in the beginning
We'll put
of
it
the
on
year,
the
this would be one that we would have them, because we say in this policy, we're gonna make it an annual notice so parents know what the rights are and how we're handling student privacy. I think that's important for parents to know. Are you good on that one, Troy?
Yep.
Okay. So that's 333. Good morning, Gary. Basic instructional program. So districts follow something, the 20 educational standards. Mary probably remembers that because you went through what those 20 were when you were in your practicum. Very important. It really helps us to have minimum expectations for what our educational program will look like. So that's basically what this policy reads.
This is a new one.
Yeah. Any questions on that one, Drew? Yeah. Basically, it just means when we have new courses or new things, the board will be approving that. So maybe you remember as you came on last year, Troy, like when we, or when we redid some of the elective offerings at the wheels, so the board saw what classes and courses that would be, and if we were adopting the Project Lead the Way curriculum on those. All right. We are on 341.1. This is just WASB sample policy. We are required to have, just so you know, have a particular goals and policies relating to reading annually. It's required that we have some goal work around that, which currently we try to meet. That's part of the district's improvement plan. When you see some things relating to writing there, that's where I currently put it, instead of its own standalone plan, but districts are required to always have a reading plan. And that's a new one as well. Any questions on that one? No. All right, policy 341.2, academic and career planning, education for employment. We actually do have a law that requires us to offer an ACP, an education for employment plan. It begins in 6th grade, 6 to 12 normally. So that's kind of what this outlines. It's very vanilla. Just pick the sample policy from WASB. You will know that's why when we do any ACP plan changes, maybe you'll remember, Troy, we had you guys approve the ACP plan back last May, and then when we were unable to find another counselor, I had to bring the plan back to the board this fall for the modifications because we can't get it all done because we don't have the staffing. And that's really the reason for that. We have a requirement to have a plan and it needs to be approved at all times. So that's very typical how some districts would handle that. But and of course, we're just directing it in grades 6 through 8. guess I could ask is when we are working through these, you'll see a lot of the district administrator or designee. That was on purpose, as we never know what positions in the smaller district will be there. So in most cases, the designee code right now is for people in my type of a position, but if not, it would fall under the district administrator to assign, to do the work or to assign that. And that was a purposeful way of writing the 300. Yep, on certain parts of the 300 series in particular, we're trying to be consistent. Any questions on the education for employment? All right, so again, that's a new adoption. All right, we have human growth and development. That is also a renumber from our work.
I got it.
And that would be from a policy number 7043. And I'll have to make a note on here, Ron, we would actually have to renumber the corresponding rule.
Yep, 7043-1 was the corresponding.
So,
Yep. So we'll renumber that.
341 point. So I'm sorry, that's not on the matrix,
Okay.
but we have a corresponding rule for that.
Okay.
So, I do have some light changes on there. We basically added a line that we can talk to students about hygiene.
I know that because that was a conversation that we
Yeah.
had, and, yep.
Yep, and also, yep, and then, some of those things are covered in health as well, in our health class, so I think we put in things that deal with health standards.
Yep.
Just because it was very, very restricted to the side that, and some of those things were part of our health standards, so we cleaned that up, hygiene, if it falls under health.
Yep, approved health curriculum, basic hygiene.
Yeah.
Health and sport services.
Yeah, so do you have any questions for that? Because that is a recommended change that we have based off of what we just
Go ahead.
implemented. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think a lot of teachers will appreciate that one.
All right, so you're good with that then?
So, yeah.
Okay. And then, the rule will just be added below that on the matrix.
And that would be what, rule?
7043.1 as a renumber. I also want to put the active or legal references in there as well. We didn't have that here, as we're cleaning that up our first time around. Our next policy, homebound instruction. This again is new, and it's numbered 342.2. So our administration is recommending we put this policy in place, working with Lori, as you know, our Director of Special Education and Pupil Services. We have had in our time here some students that we offered homebound instruction to. So it just gives the district some leeway, depending on what's going on with the child temporarily, that we might go into their homes and provide them some support and instruction, if that's needed. In most cases, it will be very rare. Sometimes it's kids with, you know, I'm thinking we had in my former life, a kid with some intensive things. We actually worked with the hospital at providing them some homebound instruction actually to the hospital with some intensive cancer needs. You know, you do kind of what you need to do in those unique situations.
Been through it.
So.
Just formalizes it.
Yeah. I Any questions on that one, Troy?
So in this one, considered by the superintendent, are we gonna keep it superintendent? or are we
Look,
gonna
I
go with
just
district
found
admin?
that.
Yeah, I did keep district
Yeah.
administrator too.
No
Okay.
matter how many.
So
people
anywhere,
people-
we're gonna correct anywhere it says superintendent on, we're gonna change it to district administrator.
District administrator typically.
Mhm.
That's what, okay, just making sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right. Any questions? We're good? All right. Next, it's nice that Mary's here. We have not currently had a policy. This would be a recommendation new for gifted and talented programming. I think it's important to always have a policy for a program and how we're gonna handle gifted education in the district. So I always recommend that we include that in our policy work. I would say, you know, we do have a law where we identify and have to offer programming, so it's kind of nice to put in the policy work. I think it lets your community know that's an important part of your overall education program, so. That's, and again, that would be new. I feel like, is this top part of the policy like a little lighter? Some of these lighter, I might have to check font, maybe not. Or just how mine printed?
Oh.
Like the bullet points are darker than that.
Yeah,
Which is fine.
the numbers, yeah, like, I don't know, like something happened a little
Mhm.
funky with that.
Have you gotten any feedback from any of the staff on this policy, any addition, corrections, concerns?
I haven't gotten any feedback from any staff on any policy
Nothing.
No,
that's been submitted today.
And they've all had ample time. How long's it been out for
2
staff?
weeks.
Oh, okay. that's-
2+ weeks? Yeah.
Okay.
2+ weeks.
But they still can always give input,
Yeah.
because it's the first read, so.
We can.
All right.
all right, great, so this next one is policy number 342.5, Title I programming. It would be a new,
Probably Title I dollars we get.
well, we currently are not getting Title I dollars, but up to this year we did. And to take the money, we need to have a policy, a corresponding rule. So I will say, in order for us to follow our legal obligation to take Title I funds, and I would still recommend, although we currently are not getting any, that's very unusual, you usually always get a base and minimum, that we have both of the, we need to have the policy and the rule to meet that requirement.
Okay.
That's gonna happen in another place in ELL as well, so, and basically the, you know, as usual, the rule kind of puts more of what the, you know, is a little bit more detailed orientated than the rule, but it requires us to have parent involvement, Title I plan. It gives more specifics of what it would be like for school-wide or targeted assistance programming. I will tell you, very few school districts in suburban areas would ever be a school-wide school. We fall under targeted assistance like 99% of the time, which the difference is just the way that you can spend your dollars. Target assistance, schools basically have to follow ESSA requirements for the type of programs. They have to be evidence-based that you spend your funds on. If you hire staff with the money, they have to be appropriate licensure. Why school-wide programs allow a little bit more flexibility in the funds. You can use it broader, I would say. But to be that, you have to have a significant amount of students that would be, whose families would be eligible for free and reduced lunch. That's how they calculate Title I funding.
It's a big district like MPS. So.
Yes, they are definitely school-wide. You know, even some of my school, my former district that were inching up to being a higher percentage, we never got to the school the school-wide. I would say, when I was in Germantown, we did have one school that was school-wide. Otherwise, everyone is pretty much targeted assistance. And that's, I think, important to know, because a lot of strings come with federal money, even with our ESSER funds. Like, every time we bought like a reading or a math program, April and I have to work together because we have to put it into the budget and we have to link it to an evidence-based practice or the research that supported that. So that's sort of the same when you enter Title I funds, so.
Funds we spent for certain things.
Yes.
And targeted.
All for certain things, it's just loose or tight.
Yeah.
Loose or tight purse strings,
Yep.
yeah. Do you have any questions on that?
No. A lot like you say, yes, sir.
It would be, they used a lot of the same framework, actually. All right, so, any comments on the rule either, or are those good?
One more detail.
Okay. All right, Troy, I will follow this up to say, on our matrix, we have a policy 6000.2, testing of limited proficient LEP students. That is a delete.
What was that?
6000.2. That is very old language for what we would call English language learners. And so it was easier for me to recommend a delete and just take these brand news, because there was nothing that I would be able to take off of there. Yeah. And that's noted on here too, the delete.
Which one?
It's for policy 342.7, service programs for English language learners. And then again, it has a corresponding rule that you'll notice is really kind of lengthy. And again, I would tell you the policy is very small, it's one page. And it's a very long rule. And I do that on purpose because rules, depending on, I'm not sure how you guys note it, rules sometimes can be just administratively changed to align to policy. We didn't always take all rule changes back to the board, because that should be a little bit more aligned to the day-to-day running of things. What do we have in policy for that, or maybe we didn't get to that
It's
policy?
not addressed in, from a school board standpoint or administrative.
Yeah, I might want to think about that. So, again, these are pretty typical. It is. Do you have any questions on it?
Not right this second.
Okay.
I mean.
Okay, it's pretty legal. You're happy to contact me. I oversee the ELL programming here, so, you know, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. But basically, everything in here is something that we do. Assessing, you know, it refers to the state test kind of access that happens throughout December through January in most cases that we test all kids. They have plans. Erin Singer right now, she's one of our ELA teachers. She was an EL teacher, before coming here. So one of her periods a day, she's responsible for working with our EL students in programming. So we have a person here that tested them and is working with them and their classroom teacher on their plans and programs. We used to last year have a consultant come in to do that, but it's nice to be able to use some of our staffing and licensures and experiences that we have here to be able to do that. So, yeah. I don't know if Erin finds it fun right now because we have required every district who has a student that takes the alternative access has to do the alternative pilot. So we just finished the test and now we're doing another test. So maybe it's not so fun to be ELL,
Not right now.
I don't know if it's ever exactly good. So unless I hear, we'll move them forward. Troy, unless you've got some recommendations, but most of what's in there is very little choice, I would say, offering.
And 6 out of 2 is going by.
Yeah. All right, our next policy is 345.1, grading and developmental feedback. Very interesting policy. Always got something on. And this was taken from both WASB sample policy 1 and 2. Again, our admin team looked at this. It's basically leaving us a lot of room to do what we need to do when it comes to grading and giving feedback. And also to be very specific about our students with disabilities and that how we will be providing the same thing in our non-discrimination clause, which is recommended. About that policy is it just kind of directs administration and teachers to work together on what that should look like. Any questions on that one? We're getting towards the end.
Yeah, look at the paragraph. The grading criteria.
Oh,
That's
yes.
like what you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Homework.
Renumbered.
It's a renumber from 6,018. I did notice in the notes I usually linked that old policy,
That's okay.
so
It
that's
is.
good. Yeah, I didn't
It's
link
there.
there.
It's in
I
there.
know,
On the other, at the end, yeah.
yeah, at the end of the things, but I could definitely put it under like that, just that recommendation area,
Okay.
so it will be easier for others, so I'll update that when we actually take this to our board. Again, the spirit of this is to kind of work on our specific day-to-day practice with our instructional staff.
Number 4 by number 1, yeah. Well, I thought we did a policy that you guys can report.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
So our last two up for half of our 300s is policy 345.4, which is promotion and retention. And this is a renumber and update of our current policy 6004.3. But basically it delegates responsibilities to administration. I would say this is a bunch of different policies together. When No Child Left Behind came in, that was late 90s, early 2000s, they had a requirement, Troy, that we determine, there's no social promotion, how we move a kid from one grade to the next. And so that's clearly outlined in the policy, and the why behind that is because it needs to be outlined in the policy. And then how retention would work. This is a little different than our current retention policy. As far as the biggest difference, I would say, is it's always been the case that districts could retain students, like placement rights of where students go has always resolved within the district. The authority actually comes from the law that says districts can take that, but we've been pretty loose if a parent wanted to retain a student. But our hope would be a retention wouldn't be necessary in this kind of policy, that we would be putting instructional supports and things in place to have that student get the support that they need to be successful, because retention is not, it has a negative impact in most cases actually on achievement. And so we want to be really cautious about if we would be retaining students, why we would and what would be. And if it happens, it sometimes more would be with our real early kids. And Lori's a part of that. You know, you kind of hear the summer kids are the kids that we might look at. Since you start September 1st, that might be quite not ready. But and the spirit of this you'll find in something that you actually approved last year, which was early entrance policy into kindergarten and first grade. It's same on the other side too. We're very cautious over who we would, and sometimes that's like a birthday. If a kid's really ready and they were born like August 30th and September 1st is a cut. Right, this really is allowing more loosiness to make decisions based off of an individual basis. But I mean, our parents have had a lot of choice into that over here without regards to what we've been doing on the intervention side, but we really want to work more with parents because it tends not to be very successful, so.
That's good.
But I'm just being transparent. It's gonna be a change.
It'll be a change in practice, for sure. Yeah.
You feel more positive though?
Yeah, well, we've always, like Maria said, we always work with the families, and when it does come to us, there are a lot of times when the district would disagree with the family because there isn't a really strong academic component, that the family would see it to be an academic component, but the data would not indicate that retention is necessary. So we've always leaned on and given the parent the final approval on that. This now would reside with the district, correct, which is what we would like it to be based on research and all the things that Maria did. Because there is no research base that says if you retain a child, a strong research base, that if you retain a child for academic, for reasons other than academics don't move forward.
You'll notice they kind of put the research in here, so
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't.
Right.
I mean, just because the negative effect size on it is so huge, like it normally does. Like I said, it's not always. That's why you want to be loosey-goosey. We certainly have kids with, birthdays that are close where a parent put them in because maybe they were born September 9th and it just isn't working out the same that they thought, and those would be the cases that we would say, yep, it probably does make sense. It doesn't. The social part of that is
Right.
close enough.
Yeah, this is not a no retention policy. This just means basically that the district will have the final say. We'll work with the families and things like that too as well. So, yep.
So this will be coming up this year then, start using it.
Yeah,
Next
we all.
school, next school
year.
Next school year,
Yeah.
yeah, because we'll start to have the
2024.
conversations, typically they happen right around that May, June time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if we really are recommending a retention, we'd probably be wanting to have them even sooner. with
We're
parents.
already having some
Yeah.
conversations. Yeah, those conversations start really soon. If the district wants to, or something that the district would pursue, typically the parent conversations happen late spring or early summer, where all of a sudden they'll say, hey, I'd like to retain my child in first grade because of X, Y, Z.
Hey,
All right, last one, please.
it's probably because I didn't jinx myself like I do at student
Yeah,
achievement,
exactly.
like we're gonna be done early. The next series has more ones to talk about. So the student assessment system is a renumber and update to our current policy, 3018, and it just kind of, again, has in there, our expectations for student assessment in the district and how we're gonna report that, and the state requires districts to adopt a policy that affirms the district's commitment to non-discrimination, student testing and evaluation. And so, again, we haven't got a request for this, Troy, but it basically says like parents can't waive their kids out of like a math test
Oh, yeah.
or a spelling test or some of our other assessments that we use. And it just clarifies, you know, parents can opt out at grades 4 and 8. Clarifies that district assessment data and summary data. I probably will be talking a little bit more to board about that in the future because the data comes out a couple different ways. We have the district data dashboard, which is a chunk of how we would be updating the board, like here's where we are, here's where we want to go. That's our main tracking thing. When you get the math report next month, you're going to see a bunch of student data between the last time the review happened. So within the 5 years, what has our data looked like on the state assessment? We have not had a common screener in that time frame that we can use, but normally that would also be included. You know, if we're using something like, so in the future, iReady, for example, would be something between the next reviews that we would include, like, here's the information on proficiency and what we saw there and where we are now. It also will include our grade data from Arrowhead. So it's not just, you know, when we have testing cycles, I'll use that word that we update. We certainly do with the district report card and the forward and some of our other data, but you should see more of our local data come out in reviews and through our district dashboard. That's really kind of what our admin team's been working on, and in our goal work, right? So, you know, both of the principals have some goals written around that, so when they update, that's where you should be seeing some of that information.
So basically, the meat and potatoes, you just went on right off the philosophy. You didn't really incorporate a lot in Neola and a lot or anywhere else
In what?
in the policies.
Oh, no, if you look at the
Did you-
bottom,
oh,
I
at the
refer
bottom.
to all.
Okay,
There's
correct.
very few, probably stock policies
Stock,
that
yeah,
they
that's what I
just
mean,
took.
yeah.
Like the last one had WASB, Whitefish Bay, and Elmbrook.
You know, and that's why I left them noted. I just wanted to be really transparent to the community where I got it from. I would be taking, remember, I started this by saying I usually have all these screens up, and then bring something forward, and some of them have changed, like we've done updates when our admin team looked through them. What did you liked this, didn't like that. But yeah, very few are probably a full
Yeah, just the.
bunch stock, just based off of my
I know that's a
experience.
question that's always asked, is like, what's new policy, what's allowed to be stock policy?
Yeah, and I think what I would like to recommend that we do is just kind of keep it at the bottom until it gets approved, and then we can, because that transparently says where we got them
Exactly.
from, and then we can remove them once they're adopted, but, yeah.
Same way in the 100 and the 200, those were identified in the matrix
Yeah.
instead of in the.
Instead of the bottom.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Yeah,
looking for.
that's
in
just a
the
little
matrix.
different,
It's
yeah,
different.
a little
That's
bit
what-
different there.
You did
Yeah.
different, that's why I was looking.
Yeah,
We won't highlight who was right.
what, probably me.
That's why we're not gonna highlight it.
No, I think there are a lot more stock policies in his than what would be in mine, which is just because every district has so many nuances in instruction or how they handle certain things, and you wanna be able to respond to your local community, so,
Yeah, Merton,
yeah, it's not very
instruction.
typical, that we would have something completely, plus yeah. But it takes a little more time, but I think you end up with something that's a little bit more.
We've been working on this probably, Maria and the admin team, have been working on this for several months. Yeah, every other week we try to get together and take a look, and
Yeah,
she presents, and
Yeah,
then away we go, so.
we read all of them, we talk about it, we make changes.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, so we will have the next set
Yep.
in April.
Yep.
Are we moving this group forward first, or are we
First read.
moving?
Yeah, we can do a
Yep.
first read on this for.
March
Yeah,
and
we'll
next
just
week.
add another thing to March.
So, well, it is, yep,
Yeah.
so I did already, it's on the tentative agenda already, so I think
Okay,
with.
because I do have some changes I'll probably do, based
Yeah,
off
these are
what we
notes.
talked about,
Yeah,
yeah,
those-
clean
those-
up, I
those
found a
are-
couple district administrators still.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Jen will probably
If-
think, how can we
If
miss
you
these?
if you could just have those ready to go by Thursday, because then we'll publish the board packet ready to go at that time, and I'll inform the board this morning that after the policy committee, that basically outside of a couple little cleanup edits, those are ready to move forward to the full board for first reading on Monday, the 20th. Okay. Since Nicole isn't here this morning, do we want to wait to schedule the next meeting? Again, I think we can, we will be ready to go with the next half. Oh, we'll see. We should be able to get that out easily before spring break to give everybody a couple week notice prior to the next policy meeting. Do you agree with that or no?
Do we want?
I would say that I'm
How much?
Wait-
Same time.
waiting on some of the work from
Special education
and technology,
IT,
so
okay.
I don't, before spring break is, have that done by next week. We're not gonna do an admin run through with all of those.
and those two, okay.
I'm just trying to be realistic, if we wanna keep with our same process, which I think's been
Right.
pretty successful.
17, like possibly April 17th. Does that give you more than time?
Yeah, I just need more than, it's,
Maybe we tentatively put one for April 17th.
Yeah.
At 7:30?
Yeah, we'll do another 7:30 for
7:30.
staff.
Okay.
And then if Nicole cannot do it, we can change it.
She's usually pretty flexible as long as she's not traveling.
and you're sending an invite
Yep,
out for that?
right now.
And does that give us enough time, though, to, I personally think, Troy, there will be more discussion in the second half. We have our comprehensive guidance policy in there. Yeah, let me look what's all on there, but I think there's ones that might garner more conversation between board and admin. In that.
I guess the sooner you can get it out to the board and then give them time to digest it, email any questions. So after spring break or.
Yeah, I'll work with Maria and, we may slowly,
go.
we may
Oh,
leak
maybe
them
a
out
little bit at a
slowly.
time.
Yeah,
Yep.
we have
Whole
have a
bunch
lot
ready.
done, we're probably still working on like 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Get out when you can and
Yep.
just don't force anything.
I'm trying to think, because, yep, we took a couple out of sync dealing with students with disabilities. I have met with Lori on those, and we know we have a couple deletions there, some programs that are in our policy that even cooperatives, things that don't exist anymore. And then 504 is in there. Like I said, student records, which is a honker of a policy. That's a lot to,
There's a lot there.
Oh, there's a 504 policy out there, isn't
yes.
it? That's what, I
Yes.
remember I brought up
Yeah.
504.
Yep.
so the-
Yeah.
the
We're
last-
bringing it up.
Yep.
Like, you know, acceptable use policy, assistive technology with counseling service, like I said. Those are probably the big ones that I think might garner a little more, yeah. Because most of them are also new, or like special ed needed, we take like the whole deletion, we just reworked it.
Restart.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right, so you have an invite out for
Yep,
that?
invites out.
Okay,
Okay.
all righty.
Oh, Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.